Ladies and gentlemen, romantic relationships are not merely emotional entanglements, nor are they transient pleasures to be consumed and discarded like yesterday's news. They are, instead, the crucibles in which our character is tested, shaped, and ultimately revealed. A relationship is not simply about love, it is about responsibility, discipline, sacrifice, and the voluntary acceptance of vulnerability. At its core, a romantic relationship is a voluntary act of courage. Why? Because to love someone is to allow them the power to hurt you deeply and to do so anyway, willingly. You look at another human being and say, I will open myself to you, I will risk the chaos of intimacy for the possibility of shared order. That is no trivial decision, that is an existential wager. You see, people often believe they are searching for happiness in a partner. That's naive. What they are truly seeking is meaning, and meaning does not emerge from comfort, it emerges from commitment, from shared goals, from mutual sacrifice, from confronting suffering together. A relationship works when two people are simultaneously trying to become better, not just for themselves, but for each other. If you are not growing within the relationship, and if your partner is not growing, then it's not a relationship, it's a negotiation of convenience. And convenience breeds resentment. Love, real love, is not a feeling, it is a practice. It is the act of showing up when it's hard, listening when you want to yell, forgiving when you want to run, and holding space for someone else's chaos, even while managing your own. That is not easy, that is work, but that is the work that makes life worth living. So if you're looking for a relationship, don't ask who will complete you, ask who will challenge me to be more, who will walk through the fire beside me, and not flinch, because when you find that, when two souls voluntarily walk into the storm of life, hand in hand, you don't just find love, you find transcendence. Romantic relationships are acts of courage, not the kind of courage that shouts from rooftops, or parades itself through grand gestures, but the quiet, daily bravery of choosing another person, in spite of your own flaws, wounds, fears, and the chaos of life. It's easy to be alone, it's easy to protect yourself, it's easy to avoid confrontation, intimacy, and responsibility, but to open yourself up to another person, truly open yourself, is to stand exposed, unguarded, and vulnerable, in front of someone who now has the power to hurt you, betray you, or walk away, and yet you still choose to risk it. That is courage. To love someone is to willingly enter the unknown. You are not dealing with an object. You are dealing with a dynamic, ever-changing individual, with their own history, beliefs, wounds, and desires. They are not predictable, they are not fully understandable, and neither are you. When two people come together, they are not just sharing affection, they are colliding worlds. Every relationship is the intersection of two chaotic systems, trying to find harmony, without sacrificing identity. That is not simple, that is not safe. That is not safe. The courage required in a romantic relationship shows itself in the smallest, often invisible ways. It takes courage to speak honestly when you fear conflict. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong, when your pride screams for silence. It takes courage to stay when leaving would be easier, to forgive when the wound is still fresh, to trust again after you've been hurt. Courage is not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just sitting at the table and saying, let's talk, when everything in you wants to shut down. It's choosing empathy over judgment, connection over distance, and effort over avoidance. So many people treat relationships like transactions. What can I get? What do I deserve? What are my needs? And while those questions aren't wrong, they are incomplete. A relationship is not a contract, it's a covenant, not just a list of rights and entitlements, but a promise to face life together, especially when it's hard, and life will be hard. It is filled with suffering, uncertainty, and stress. The real test of a romantic relationship is not how it thrives during pleasure, but how it endures in pain. Real love is revealed not in the glow of infatuation, but in the trenches of routine. Can you love someone when they're anxious, irritable, distracted, or depressed? Can you show up for them, even when you don't feel like it? Can you remain kind when you're angry, present when you're exhausted, and patient when you don't understand them? These are not glamorous questions, but they are the foundation of enduring relationships. and every one of them demands courage, emotional, psychological, and spiritual courage. You see, fear is natural in intimacy. The closer someone gets to the truth of who you are, the more exposed you feel. They see your scars, your contradictions, your weaknesses. There's a part of you that wants to hide, to keep them at a distance, to maintain the illusion of perfection. But that illusion is what kills intimacy. Real connection only grows when we let go of our masks and allow ourselves to be seen, and that too takes immense courage. There is also the courage to stay committed to growth, because you will not be the same person 5 years into the relationship, nor will your partner. People evolve, often in interconnected ways. The question is whether you're willing to grow together instead of apart. Can you keep discovering each other again and again, not assuming you already know who they are? Can you remain curious, even when the mystery fades? That is hard work. That is courageous work. Romantic relationships are not fairy tales. They are not supposed to be perfect. They are supposed to be real, messy, challenging, transformative. They are opportunities for two flawed people to refine one another, not through domination or control, but through mutual commitment to something higher, something that demands everything you have, and then asks for more. Not everyone is ready for that. Not everyone wants that. But for those who do, those willing to face themselves and another person with open eyes and an open heart, the relationship becomes not just a source of comfort, but a furnace that forges depth, character, and strength. The goal is not happiness, but meaning. This distinction matters more than most people realize. Happiness is fleeting. It comes and goes like the weather, dependent on circumstances, your mood, your finances, your energy, your environment. It's what you feel when things go your way. But meaning is different. Meaning is what sustains you when everything falls apart. It's what you cling to when you're exhausted, misunderstood, or grieving. It doesn't disappear when the feelings fade. It grounds you, it guides you, it gives purpose to your suffering and structure to your chaos. In romantic relationships, this difference is everything. People often enter relationships expecting to be made happy, as if the other person's job is to fulfill them, complete them, or endlessly entertain them. But no one can carry the weight of another's happiness for long. People are not designed to be sources of constant emotional gratification. That's not a relationship, that's dependence. And dependence, while it might feel good at first, turns corrosive with time. When you place the burden of your joy on someone else's shoulders, they will eventually collapse. And when they do, the relationship crumbles under the pressure of unmet expectations. Meaning, by contrast, isn't about how the relationship makes you feel, it's about what it calls you to become. A meaningful relationship doesn't always feel good. In fact, it will often demand more of you than you want to give. It will reveal your flaws, expose your blind spots, challenge your assumptions, and test your limits. But that's exactly why it's meaningful, because it forces you to grow, and growth is not always pleasant. Sometimes it's painful, uncomfortable, and deeply inconvenient, but it is always worth it. People chase happiness and wonder why they're dissatisfied. They think, if I could just find the right person, I'd be happy. But the right person isn't someone who makes you feel good all the time. The right person is someone who challenges you to be better, who helps you become more honest, more disciplined, more loving, more real. That isn't always fun, but it is meaningful, it matters, it lasts. In a meaningful relationship, the question is not, how do I feel right now, but what are we building together? Are you building trust, or are you eroding it with selfishness and avoidance? Are you moving toward a shared future, or are you clinging to comfort at the expense of truth? Are you willing to suffer for one another? Are you only in it for the easy parts? Happiness says, I'm here as long as it feels good. Meaning says, I'm here because this matters, even when it's hard. To pursue meaning over happiness is to accept that life is not designed to be easy. It is designed to be purposeful, and a relationship that aims for meaning takes seriously the reality of suffering. It doesn't pretend things are fine when they're not. It doesn't collapse when the storm comes. It recognizes that love is not a refuge from difficulty, but a reason to endure it. It's the shared commitment to something bigger than either person alone. And what is that bigger thing? It's the idea that two people, flawed and finite, can walk side by side through life's pain and still choose each other, not because it's always rewarding in the moment, but because it leads somewhere worthwhile. Meaning is found in commitment, in showing up when you don't feel like it, in choosing to see your partner not as an object of pleasure, but as a soul worth sacrificing for, in telling the truth when it costs you, in apologizing when you've failed, in forgiving even when it's hard. The culture tells us to follow our feelings, to leave when we're unhappy, to prioritize self-fulfillment above all else. But meaning does not come from indulging yourself, it comes from transcending yourself, from laying down your ego for the sake of something sacred. And when two people do that, when they both decide to carry the weight of the relationship rather than place it on the other, it creates something unbreakable, not perfect, not painless, but powerful, enduring, meaningful. In the end, you don't remember the fleeting moments of pleasure nearly as much as the trials you overcame together. You remember the nights you didn't give up, the arguments you worked through, the moments of raw honesty that brought you closer, even if they hurt at first. That is meaning, and that is worth infinitely more than a temporary feeling of happiness. A successful relationship requires both individuals to grow. That's not optional. That's the foundation, because a relationship is not a stagnant agreement, it's a living, evolving dynamic between two people who are constantly changing. If one person grows and the other stays the same, imbalance arises, resentment follows, and over time, the connection that once felt alive begins to wither. Love cannot remain healthy in a fixed state. It needs movement, it needs transformation, and that means both individuals must take responsibility, not only for who they are, but for who they are becoming. Growth in a relationship is not just about career advancement or personal goals. It's about emotional maturity, moral responsibility, communication, patience, and self-awareness. It's about the courage to confront your weaknesses and the humility to admit that you don't have it all figured out. When you enter a relationship, you are not a finished product. Neither is your partner. You're both works in progress, and a healthy relationship allows and requires that process to continue. Too many people enter relationships thinking the goal is to find someone who will accept them exactly as they are. But unconditional acceptance does not mean you're free from the need to change. It means you're loved enough to grow within a safe, committed space. A space where your flaws aren't used against you, but also aren't ignored. A space where you are challenged, not condemned, supported, not enabled. That kind of environment doesn't happen by. It's created through mutual fit and a shared commitment to becoming better. When two people stop growing, the relationship begins to die in quiet ways. Conversations become routine, intimacy fades, curiosity disappears. You stop asking questions because you think you already know everything about it. But people are far more complex than we realize. Even someone you've lived with for years still has depths you haven't seen, potential that hasn't been developed, stories they haven't told, and perspectives that shift with time. If you're not growing together, you're drifting apart. Growth doesn't always look the same for both partners. One may be learning to express emotions more openly. The other may be working on listening without. One may be exploring spiritual questions, while the other is tackling old wounds from childhood. That's normal. The important thing is that both people are moving, that they are not treating the relationship as a destination, but as a journey that demands consistent reflection and renewal. And growth is not always graceful. In fact, it's often messy. It involves failure, discomfort, and pain. It means facing the parts of yourself you'd rather avoid, your insecurities, your fears, your pride, your stubbornness. But in the context of a relationship, you can't hide forever. Sooner or later, those unresolved parts of you will show up in argument, in distance, in repeated patterns. The question is not whether you have flaws, but whether you're willing to confront them, whether your partner is willing to do the same, and whether you can support each other in that process without shame. When a relationship fosters mutual growth, it becomes something far more profound than companionship. It becomes a crucible for character, a place where you are shaped into someone stronger, wiser, and more whole. not through control or pressure, but through love and truth. You call each other up, not tear each other down. You recognize when it's time to stretch, to face discomfort, to leave behind old habits that no longer serve the relationship. You don't settle for being tolerated. You strive to become worthy of the trust you've been given. Real intimacy is built on the knowledge that you are seen not just for who you are, but for who you are. That someone believes in your capacity to become more. That they won't let you shrink, even when they want to. And that you will do the same for them. This kind of relationship is rare, not because it's impossible, but because it demands intentional discipline and courage from both people. Growth is not a threat to love. It's the very evidence of it. If you love someone, you want to see them thrive, not stay stuck. And if you love yourself, you want to be the kind of partner who brings value to another person, not to another person's life. Not through a relentless commitment to becoming better. When both people share that mindset, the relationship doesn't just survive, it transforms. It becomes a space of evolution, not escape. And that is the kind of love that endures. True love is a discipline, not a fleeting feeling. It's not the rush of infatuation, not the high that comes in the days. Everything feels effortless and exciting. Those feelings are real, yes, but they are temporary. They fade, they shift, they lose their intensity. And when they do, what remains is what you've chosen to build or neglected to. Love that lasts, love that transforms, love that deepens over time is not something that happens to you. It's something you do day after day, often when you least feel like doing it. People tend to romanticize the emotional side of love, and there's a place for that. Attraction matters, chemistry matters, but the problem is that we've elevated emotion to the throne, as if love is only real when it's easy or euphoric. That's a lie. Feelings are inconsistent. They are shaped by mood, circumstance, hormones, stress, and a thousand other factors. If love were only a feeling, it would be utterly unreliable. You'd wake up one day and wonder where it went. And many people do, not realizing that what's missing isn't love. It's commitment, intention, discipline. To treat love as a discipline is to understand that it requires practice. You don't become a good partner by accident, just like you don't become a skilled musician or athlete by accident. It takes attention, repetition, failure, correction, and perseverance. You must choose to listen when you'd rather dismiss. Choose to speak gently when your instinct is to lash out. Choose to stay open when you feel like shutting down. And these choices are not always rewarded immediately. Sometimes they feel one-sided. Sometimes they cost more than they. But over time, they build something solid. Discipline in love means showing up even when it's inconvenient. It means keeping your word, honoring your promises, staying faithful to your values and to your partner, not because you're always inspired, but because you say you will. It means apologizing when you're wrong, forgiving when you've been hurt, and having the hard conversations that are necessary for trust to grow. None of this comes naturally. It takes and effort, sustain, over time, becomes character. There's a difference between falling in love and staying in love. Falling in love happens to you. It's a biological event. It comes with adrenaline, dopamine, idealization. You see the best in someone. You're filled with hope. But staying in love is different. It's a conscious decision to remain present, to invest, to fight for connection, even when the feelings have dulled. That is where love becomes something noble, something sacred, not because it's perfect, but because it's chosen. And choosing love again and again, especially when it's difficult, does something to you. It refines you. It teaches you humility, because you'll learn how flawed you are. It teaches you grace, because you see how flawed your partner is. It teaches you resilience, because the relationship will go through storm. There will be boredom, misunderstanding, conflict, silence, hurt. But if you understand that love is a discipline, you won't be surprised by these things. You won't see as signs that love has died. You'll see them as the moments that love is tested, and therefore given the chance to become real. There is no such thing as a relationship without effort. Every last is held together by the daily decision to value each other above comfort, ego, and ease. This kind of love is quiet. It doesn't always look romantic. It looks like cleaning the kitchen when your partner is overwhelmed, like listening to the same frustration again and again until the end heals, like keeping temper when you're exhausted, like staying when it would be simpler to leave. These moments aren't perfect, but they are love. When love is a discipline, it creates security. Your partner doesn't have to guess whether you'll be there tomorrow. They don't have to earn your affection every day, or fear that one bad moment will undo everything. They can rest in the knowledge that your love is not based on how they make you feel, but on who you've decided to be. And that kind of love creates a space where both people can grow, stumble, and rise again, together. So no, true love isn't just a feeling. It's the result of 1,000 decisions to act in love, even when the feeling is gone. And over time, as you practice that discipline, the feelings return, but deeper, steadier, and more grounded in something real. Convenience erodes intimacy. It's an uncomfortable truth in a world that worships ease, efficiency, and instant gratification. Relationships that once thrived on deep connection, presence, and effort can slowly fall in the shadow of convenience. We begin to take each other for granted. We substitute meaningful conversation with brief messages, presence with screens, and real conflict resolution with avoidance. All of it feels easier in the moment, but over time, the intimacy suffers, because intimacy isn't born from ease, it's born from effort. From showing up when it's hard and inconvenient. We live in a culture where almost everything is one tap away. Food, entertainment, attention, it's all available on demand. But love isn't. Connection isn't. You can't automate vulnerability. You can't rush understanding. And you certainly can't microwave trust. Intimacy requires time. It requires the format. It requires the willingness to be present, even when you're tired, or distracted, or emotionally stretched. And the more we prioritize what's easy or what's meaningful, the more we lose capacity to be close to one another. Convenience tells you to speak only when it's comfortable. Intimacy asks you to speak even when it's vulnerable. Convenience says, just scroll, just nod, just keep it light. Intimacy demands that you lean in, ask deep questions, listen with your full attention, and that kind of presence is inconvenient. It pulls you out of your mental autopilot. It forces you to engage, not just react. But it's in those inconvenient moments when you put down when you say what you're really feeling, when you make time to listen fully, that true connection is born. When convenience dominates the relationship, routine replaces curiosity. You stop exploring each other. You stop asking what the other person is carrying emotionally. You assume you know, but people change, often in subtle ways. They carry silent burdens. They shift inside, without always saying so. If you're not paying attention, you miss it. And over time, two people can drift apart. Not because something dramatic happened, but because no one knows the small shifts, the unspoken needs, the lonely silence. Intimacy is built through the inconvenience of staying restless when it would be easier to check out, through the hard work of repair after conflict, taking time to understand your partner's perspective, even when you don't agree. It grows in the conversations you didn't want to have, but had anyway, in the sacrifices you made for the sake of the relationship, in the moments you chose depth over comfort, truth over convenience. There is a cost too. Always choosing what's easy. You lose the fire, the depth, the aliveness that makes love feel real. Relationships become functional rather than intimate. You do what you need to do. Manage schedules, share responsibilities, keep the peace,
but you stop really seeing each other. You become efficient roommates rather than lovers. And eventually, that lack of intimacy turns into frustration, confusion, or apathy. You wonder why things feel dull, why the closeness is gone, but often it's because you stop doing the inconvenient things that intimacy requires. The paradox is that what is inconvenient in the short term often creates the deepest rewards in the long term. Waking up early to talk before the day starts, staying up late to resolve a disagreement instead of going to bed angry, choosing to listen when you're irritated, saying I love you, not just out of habit, but because you paused and felt it. These small acts feel like sacrifices in the moment, but they build a bond that can withstand the storms of life. Convenience also affects the way we resolve conflict. Instead of addressing issues directly, we suppress, deflect, or we don't want to deal with discomfort, so we leave problems unresolved. But unresolved problems don't go away, they fester. They create emotional distance, and over time, this distance becomes a wall. True intimacy requires the courage to step into conflict, to speak honestly, and to walk through the hard stuff. Not because it's easy, but because it matters. If love is to survive, let alone thrive, we must reclaim the value of inconvenience. We must remember that relationships are not maintained by accident. They are nurtured by conscious, repeated choices. Choices that often require us to go against what feels easiest, to pause, to notice, to engage, to invest. Because intimacy is not the result of convenience, it is the reward for those willing to do the inconvenient things that real love demands. Transcendent partnerships arise when both individuals walk together into life's challenges. Not when things are perfect, not when everything aligns effortlessly, but when life gets hard, really hard, and both people choose to stand side by side instead of retreating. These kinds of relationships are not forged in ease. They are not born from shared hobbies or physical attraction alone. They are built through shared struggle, mutual sacrifice, and the unwavering decision to face pain, confusion, and uncertainty together. It's in these moments that something profound is born, not just companionship, but a bond that begins to transcend ordinary experience. Most relationships begin in comfort. There's excitement, lightness, discovery, but those are the surface waters. The depth only comes later, and it often arrives disguised as difficulty, a health scare, financial stress, the loss of a loved one, a crisis of purpose. Life doesn't just ask if you're ready, it just comes. And when it does, many relationships collapse under the weight, not because the love wasn't real, but because the individuals weren't ready to carry each other through the darkness. A transcendent partnership, however, is different. It doesn't see suffering as the enemy. It sees it as the arena where love is tested, refined, and ultimately proven. In these partnerships, both people are anchored, not just to each other, but to something higher. Truth, purpose, responsibility. They are not using each other to escape the weight of life. They are shouldering that weight together. They understand that love is not an escape from suffering, but a reason to endure it. When one falters, the other steadies. When one loses hope, the other holds the line, and they trade roles as needed, without resentment or scorekeeping, because they are not in a transaction. They are in a covenant, a deep agreement to move forward, hand in hand, no matter the terrain. It is not the absence of conflict that defines a transcendent relationship. It's the presence of integrity. During that conflict, both individuals must have the courage to tell the truth, even when it hurts, to apologize sincerely, and forgive deeply, to put the needs of the relationship above their own momentary pride. That kind of humility is rare. It requires strength, not weakness, discipline, not passivity. And when both people are willing to lift it, something remarkable begins to form. A shared spirit, a joint resilience, a love that does not flee in the face of fire, but finds its meaning within it. Walking together into life's challenges also means walking toward your own brokenness and letting the other person see it. It means being vulnerable enough to say, I'm scared, or I don't know what to do, or I feel like I'm failing. And it means creating a space where those admissions are met with understanding, not judgment. That kind of emotional safety isn't built in a day, it's built slowly, through consistent acts of care, honesty, and loyalty. But once it's established, it becomes a sanctuary, a place where both people can be fully human, fully seen, and still fully chosen. A transcendent partnership doesn't depend on everything going right. It depends on both people being willing to do what's right, even when it's hard. They know that life will ask things of them that they didn't expect. It will challenge their beliefs, interrupt their plans, test their faith, but they make the decision daily to walk forward together anyway. And in doing so, they build something stronger than romance. They build devotion. This kind of love shapes the individuals within it. You don't stay the same when you are part of something this enduring. You grow, because you are constantly being invited to rise above your own limitations, for the sake of the other. You learn patience, because in patience fractures trust. You learn courage, because fear must be met, not avoided. And you learn compassion, because no one escapes the ache of living. In the end, transcendent partnerships are not about finding the perfect person. They are about becoming the kind of person who can build something sacred with another imperfect soul. They are about choosing, again and again, to walk through the storms, not alone, but together, not because it's easy, but because it's meaningful. And in that shared journey, something extraordinary emerges, something that outlasts pleasure, survives hardship, and gives both people a glimpse of what love, at its highest, was always meant to be. Thank you.